Fire, passion, and drive. I would like to discuss all about Mars, and I want to go through first an overview, and then I want to go through each of the 12 signs because it means a lot of different things in the birth chart because it's one of the personal planets. It represents the way that you act out in the world. It represents your willpower, the way that you take action. It's what motivates you to act or to express anger or lack of, especially if it is blocked. It represents your sexual expression. It represents what you desire. Mars rules the masculine principle. The main thing that it represents is your expression through your behavior. Your personal planets represent the ways that you express yourself in the outside world, the way that you interact and engage in the world. Your personal planets play this big role with your day-to-day lives. For example, Mercury is the way that you express through language. Venus is the way you express through love and affection. And Mars is the way you express through your acts of will. So let's look at each sign. So for Aries Sun and Aries Rising, Mars in Aries, I love this because it's in its home sign. Mars is at home in Aries because Mars rules it. Now, often people think that when planets are in their home sign, this makes them easier in some ways for their terms of expression. And in a certain degree, it really does. But this is because it's a perfect match for the energy, but it's oftentimes that I've noticed that it brings about more of a specific energy. And with Aries, it's more willful. It wants what it wants, and it wants it now, and it wants it how it wants it, so it goes after it. So if you look in your area of your chart where you have Mars, this is where that whatever you want it now, and you want it your way. Mars and Aries people, they're really great at beginning or starting or initiating projects. They're good at initiating an action. They're good at getting things started, but there's a difficulty sometimes in following through because Mars and Aries people, they need a passion, they need excitement in order to drive and push them through. This can be anything from starting a new journey, a new job, a new project. And once that project or career is no longer new, it's no longer fresh in their minds. And that excitement, that passion, it starts to wane. So Mars and Aries can sort of lose its interest with the projects and the things that it initiates. It can start to fizzle out. The idea of Mars and Aries and how it wants what it wants, and at that very moment, this can make you frustrated. It can also make you impatient with others, especially if they don't take action in the way that you want it to happen and exactly when you want it to happen in the time frame. You can tend to sometimes not be very patient with others. Oftentimes you decide to just do it yourself instead of waiting for others. You don't always trust others to do things the right way or with the right timing, your timing. And even if they do, maybe you feel like they're just too slow for you. You most likely are going to take the initiative to just go ahead and do it yourself. You can be a little bit impatient when things don't go your way and when you don't get what you want. And if this doesn't happen in your time frame and you decide that you need to just finish the job yourself. Mars and Aries people, they can become quite frustrated and sometimes angry. You can direct this in expressing your anger, usually unless it's afflicted by other planets. Mars and Aries in its pure form, they are going to tell you exactly what's wrong. They're going to tell you what they're angry about. You may even come across as maybe direct or blunt. You can come across as sometimes being a little abrasive. Because more often than not, you also may have a quick temper. You are quick to react, you're quick to anger, and the great news is you're also quick to recover, to move on, to cool down. Your anger just doesn't last that long. Everything with you is fast and impulsive. You don't harbor any resentment or hold on to things in the same way that some other signs might. And so you know that you can shut down, especially if you don't get things your way. You will either get very angry or very frustrated, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't give you the motivation or the ability to follow through, then you might walk away from it. You might become sad or withdrawn, or sometimes in a depressed mood or feeling. You know you need to keep yourself feeling motivated all the time. You know that you need to keep moving forward and feeling like that you can continue to engage, to have this spark of fire, because that's what Aries is. It's the spark, it's the initiative. This is about keeping things new and fresh and exciting, to keep your interest when you start a project. You need to keep things constantly rotating. You just can't do the same repetitive thing over and over again. You need to be doing new things constantly, switching them up, engaging in new projects, new situations, in order for you to not feel constricted or become frustrated with it. The nature of Mars is that you need to be constantly changing and evolving. Even if you're doing the same thing, it needs to be doing the same thing in a new and exciting way to keep that passion and that excitement going for you. This is the way that you can follow through, because Mars in Aries in its pure form, it's pure initiatory energy. It's the energy of starting something fresh and new. Mars in Taurus, so for Taurus, sun and rising. So Mars in Taurus is very different in contrast to Mars in Aries. It's slower to get things started with projects and with ideas and with taking action. But once you begin something or a project, you're going to see it through. You're very persistent. You're very diligent. You're very hardworking. You want to be sure that what it is that you are going to engage in or start, that you are going to have the energy to carry it out. You have the ability to follow through. I noticed that Mars is best in an earth sign because it's taking the idea that I have this passion, this initiatory energy, and I'm channeling it into something that's very practical, sound, and grounded. Now, Mars in an earth sign has better follow through than other sign placements, so that you're very driven to follow through in your actions. So once you've decided to do something, and once you've decided to make up your mind, this is what you're going to do. Even if it doesn't necessarily work out in your favor, you're still going to stick with it. You're going to make it work. And that is the nature of Mars and Taurus. What drives you is material comfort, your stability, safety, your security. So setting up a solid foundation for yourself, that type of energy, you have to look at Mars and Taurus as the context of the signs, and the same thing as Mars placements, that you're going to have to look at the houses also. Mars in Taurus wants to take action on something that's going to have long-lasting results and a lasting value, lasting material results, usually a material value. You tend to have really well-defined goals, and you don't like to be rushed. You like to do things at your own pace. And so when you are rushed by other people, you can feel extremely frustrated. You can get a little bit angry. And knowing that you are slow to anger, that's one of your downfalls of Mars and Taurus. It's that you let the anger kind of build up and fester, and you don't necessarily express your feelings right away. And you can hold it in and hold it until the only way to express it later, well, it's a delayed reaction. And when you feel anger, that can lead to these situations where you're harboring this resentment. And then when you bring up that event or that thing that someone did a while ago, that one time that they forgot about, that you didn't forget about, that you've been angry about since it happened and you've been harboring it, it comes out at some point. But it'll likely come out in a completely different context, in a different situation. There's usually like this delayed reaction, but there is really this intense need to express your anger verbally, because Taurus rules the throat and your throat chakra. So harboring resentment by not saying something is not speaking your truth and not telling people what's on your mind. This can be very detrimental. it can lead to you harboring anger. It can lead to a lot of frustration or irritability. It can lead you to kind of shut down and feel sad or depressed or empty or depleted in a variety of different ways. And therefore, you won't have the motivation to keep going forward because you're internalizing all this pent-up anger. You need to verbalize your emotions, and this includes anger. You need to like have a sounding board, or to be able to release a moment with a good cry or something that can ground you and release your anger or your pent-up energy. This is so you don't drown in your sadness or your anger with things like food or alcohol or shopping or self-indulgences of this type, because those are Taurus energies. You need to learn to not hold it in and delay the expression of your feelings, but to feel your feels as they come. So Gemini Sun and Gemini Rising. So Gemini gets really excited about things. You need constantly to be thinking and speaking and things that pique your curiosity, constant mental stimulation. You need a change of pace to like sort of keep you going. You want to do things that make sense on more of an intellectual level. You're so motivated by curiosity that you get really excited about starting projects, that you tend to like start a lot of different things and projects all at once, which is different from Mars and Aries. Mars and Aries is focused on one thing that they're starting, and once they've started it, it's off and running, and then sometimes it fizzles out. So there's a different energy that you lose passion and the motivation once the project's been initiated, because Mars in Gemini tends to initiate many projects all at once, and then you get pulled in many different directions because you're all over the place, and there can be a lot of projects that fall to the wayside because you start one project, you get really excited, you get curious about another thing, then you have another project going on and you go down a rabbit hole, and then you try to multitask and do all these things all at once, but you're not honestly the best at multitasking in terms of follow through. So there can be this disconnect in seeing things through to the end. And the best way to keep you motivated is to constantly have a change of pace. This can be incorporating these new ideas, these new things, new strategies, a sort of mental stimulation into your daily experience and into the projects that you are working with. If the project is one thing that you have to do the same thing day in, day out, you are not going to want to stick with it. But if you are able to incorporate these new ideas, these fresh experiences, to change it as you go, then you are going to be a little bit more motivated to follow through. You tend to get really excited about new ideas and projects because you're motivated by curiosity and by these new ideas. You always require this mental stimulation that drives your motivation, which in turn helps keep you going. When you feel that you don't have these new projects to stimulate your mind, your excitement, or to motivate you to act, you can get really bored, and then you will lack this energy. You are always needing to search and investigate and to try something new, to get excited about something again and again. Now, when you express your emotions, because Gemini rules communication and language, you tend to use quite direct and sometimes harsh language. You know how to debate. You know all about different topics, languages, and you want to view topics from all different angles. You will often play the devil's advocate from one side to another and saying what you want to get what you want, because that's a Gemini quality. You know what you want to say, and you know how to express your anger in these different situations to get what you want. So Mars in Gemini, it's really good for curiosity, for starting a lot of new things, and for integrating a lot of different concepts in one project. And I believe that the best utilization of this mental energy is to channel it into just one thing. So that way it keeps these projects, these ideas fresh. It keeps these things that you're excited about constantly stimulated on a mental level for you. This constant mental stimulation is what is going to drive you to keep going. Next is Cancer and Cancer rising. So Mars in Cancer, it's kind of unique because Mars is technically in its falling Cancer. Although I personally do not believe in that. I believe it can be difficult if you do not express your emotions. So with Mars in Cancer, you are motivated by your feelings, by your emotions. So that's why it tends to be considered a difficult placement, because if you're not into something, you're just not going to do it. You may feel bad at the moment, but you're not going to take action out of that feeling. You have to feel good at that moment. Then you're going to take action out of that feeling as well. So if you're extremely motivated by your emotions, and we know our emotions are cyclical, they ebb, they flow, they change with the tides, they change with the phases of the moon, they change with experiences of our day-to-day basis. And so one day you might be really excited about what's going on, and then you might want to really engage in, and then the very next day you might be wondering, why did I even start this project? Why am I doing this? I feel unhappy. I feel sad, or I just don't want to do this anymore. And so this placement can make things difficult for you to stick with something, and as a result, you can sometimes make some irrational choices when it comes to your actions, because your actions they're motivated by your emotional experience, by your intuitive senses. Remember, it's the moon, it's Cancer, it's your feelings, and not necessarily about what's going on in a logical, rational sort of the part of your brain. As a result, that you can get yourself into predicaments. You really need to be emotionally connected to what it is that you're doing, and you need to experience the full range of emotions surrounding what it is that you are acting on before you even take action. Otherwise, things can go a little bit wonky for you. It can be that you just felt really excited in the moment, and then you were feeling really good for that day. You were in this great mood, you're really good at it, and then the next day, things are just not right. You're just not feeling aligned. So you may need to tweak some adjustments. You need to make sure that you have felt it all out in all different scenarios, all the context, all the moods, if you're going to still be in agreement with that idea. And then you can take the action, and you will know that it's the right thing to do. And so you will know that you can work on those irrational actions. You know that emotional connection needs to be switched on in order to be motivated, or in order for you to be able to take action. Now, sometimes you may have a hard time sticking with things because of the emotional connection to actions that you take. And sometimes when you express anger, it is very driven. You are basically driven by your emotions in that moment, and it's not always going to be rational. Sometimes it can be impulsive, and it's always going to be connected to how you feel and what you know. For example, I feel this way, and it doesn't matter why they feel that way and why you don't have to have a reason for it. You're just going to express your anger based on how I feel, your emotions, your feelings. You may also find it easier to express anger towards your family members and your loved ones, because Cancer rules the home, more so than you do with friends. So you may take this as a misplaced frustration and maybe not direct it towards the actual person who invoked that anger in you in the first place. So you can kind of misdirect your feelings or your anger at people who you are most comfortable at expressing anger towards. And that can be one of the drawbacks of having Mars in Cancer. So for Leo Sun and Leo Rising. Now, Leo is a passionate sign. Mars does well in all of the fire signs because the fire signs are very willful, they're passionate, they're fiery, and Mars has that association with will and drive. But Leo Mars is really expressive and super playful. You're guided by a sense of purpose, a sense of your ambition. You have a feeling for a sense of knowing what you are doing is for a larger purpose than just for yourself. You want to do something that's very significant and that people are going to see and recognize you for. You want to leave your mark on the world. So this is through your actions that you're taking. This is what motivates you and what drives you to actually act. You have a true sense or a calling for acting, and this is what I'm going to do. And if you tend to not let life get in your way, and therefore, there's not a lot that can deter a Mars in Leo person. Even when things get difficult, or when you're sad, or you're feeling off, or you're going to use your inner drive, your willpower to like pull yourself up, to propel yourself to move forward. You are very strong, and you are not going to let life get in your way. You don't let anger or depression or anything like that get you down. You know that there's a bigger meaning for you out there in what you are doing. And you have this sense of destiny and this connection too. This is who I am, and this is what I'm here to do. And you're going to continue to keep moving forward because you're very optimistic. So for Virgo Sun and Virgo Rising, Mars works really well here. This is because you're very logical, you're very rational with your motivation to take action. You think things through. This is, your ideas are detail oriented. You have them, everything is well thought out, well planned out. Another thought that you can be a perfectionist in your actions that you take. So you're very hardworking. You're able to achieve and accomplish your goals because you are very goal oriented. You are excellent at multitasking, kind of like Gemini in the sense that you're going to be doing a lot of things all at once. But as a Virgo, you are going to see it through. The only thing that stops a Mars and Virgo person from actually accomplishing their goals is them being a perfectionist. That perfectionist side. So you know that it's not perfect enough. So you're going to go back and you're going to finish it, and you're going to keep on doing it and redoing it and perfecting it over and over. And it's never going to be completely finished. So in your mind, there can be this hesitation to say things that are done or completed, or to turn in a project or things because it's not perfect and it's not living up to your standards. Now, another difficulty that Mars and Virgo person can experience is that they are micromanagers, and you want to micromanage everybody, and therefore you want things done in the right way, the perfect way, which is usually your way. It's the way that you have decided in your mind is the right way to do it. And so therefore you're going to micromanage some people in order for them to do it your way. And sometimes you're just going to end up doing it yourself. It's similar to like a Mars and Aries in that sense that it's not getting done in the right way. If it's not perfect, you're going to prefer to do it yourself because you may feel that your standards are the only one that can live up to those high standards that you've set, not just for yourself, but for others. Mars and Virgo people, you tend to be constantly on the go. You need constantly to be on the move, and you're hard pressed to find a really relaxed Mars and Virgo person that's just very laid back, slow moving, and not multitasking several things at once. If you are not constantly working on several different projects and plans, then you can be very nervous or antsy and sometimes fidgety. Even when you're engaged in those types of actions, maybe you come across sometimes as sort of anxious to others. So for Libra Sun and Libra Rising, Mars in Libra always wants to take into account the needs of other people. And so you were taught from an early age to consider other people before taking action for yourself. And that prevents you, and it often hinders you sometimes from acting in your own self-interest. Remember, Libra always wants to find a balance. It's about negotiating. And so this is really positive in the sense that you are never really going to step on other people's toes or their feelings, or push aside people in order to get what you want. But it can cause you to be very indecisive and wavering in your own actions. And once you do take action, you're constantly weighing all the sides and options, often second guessing yourself. You want to make sure that you have considered every angle and side of the issue. Even after you've already initiated it, sometimes you may backtrack because you've thought of something else. They may want you to make sure that something is fair, or just before they take action that can really lead you to maybe not taking an action of your own. If you're not getting your needs met, you may start to feel frustrated and irritated or angry. You can also feel upset with unfairness because remember, Mars and Libra, they're quick to anger with any sorts of discrepancy of unfairness or inequality. It's the scales. It wants balance. So you don't feel like you're stuck in the middle or stuck in between people. Because you need all things to be in balance, sometimes there's just too much consideration for the needs of others. When your needs are not being met, you can be frustrated and you may tend to sometimes shut down. You may feel depleted, have lacking motivation, or feel like you can't get what you want or can't do what you want because it's just not the nice thing to do. It's not the right thing to do because it's not what's best for the other person. So this is one of the difficulties of Mars in Libra. They want to have the full picture of the situation, and so you're always looking at all the different sides of the argument before you make your case, before you express your anger. But that's also how it goes when you initiate this type of an action. You want to be able to justify your action before you go through all these different pieces. And this is why the best decision, you are justifying everything. This is the reason why you say, this is why I'm doing this. You want to ensure that it's fair and equitable. You don't want to appear ignorant to do what you're doing and why you're doing it. You want to be able to stand up and say, this is my reason for doing or saying or acting in this way. Scorpio Sun and Scorpio Rising. Mars and Scorpio is a beautiful combination. It is one of the most willful, strong, passionate placements for Mars. It's very consistent and it's very good at initiating action in the same way that Mars and Aries is, except for that it wants to feel things out, to see if it can see really what's going on. But at the same time, beneath the surface, all this while fighting those hidden motivations, it's about finding the truth. You're actually motivated by a deeper purpose, a deeper truth. And in turn, this obsession that takes over you causes you to become laser focused on your goals or the actions that you're taking. Because Scorpio is a fixed water sign. Once you latch onto something that you feel really passionate about, you can become fixated on it. You can become obsessed with it. You are going to follow through. You're going to see it through completely. And because they want to get to the core of whatever it is that they're doing, you are going to be on a mission to not break the concentration of Mars in Scorpio person. This is like who you are. So some pretty sound advice would be that you know you're on a mission and you don't like your concentration to be broken and you don't like people to interfere with whatever it is that you're doing, and you're probably not going to let you know what it is that they're doing. And they're different than like Mars and Libra, who wants to tell you everything that's going on and they want to justify it. Mars and Scorpio, you don't need that justification. You're just going to do it because you know it's what they need to do, that you're not going to let other people get in the way of you doing that, and that you can get very angry and sometimes frustrated when somebody breaks your focus or breaks your stamina or your concentration, because you have this really intense need to feel empowered. And so you feel like your powers might have been stripped away, or that when you feel like you're out of sorts or out of control of the situation, this makes you feel angry and this makes you feel frustrated and depleted, and you don't want to feel this powerlessness. A Mars and Scorpio placement, you might think that would be very quick-tempered, and some of them are, and some of them express their anger as way out of control, but most of you actually tend to seclude yourselves and to take yourselves out of the situation rather than directly expressing your anger, because it's your fear of losing control of your emotions and your anger and maybe taking it too far, usually because you've had some sort of like early childhood experience with a parent or an authority figure or somebody in your lives, even maybe yourself taking it too far or getting out of control of your anger. So you will tend to seek solitude rather than expressing your anger overtly. Sometimes you're going to express it right after you've taken that time away to express your feelings. Now, it's not going to be explosive experience that you might think it would be, because Mars being such a passionate side of Scorpio, that's the nature of the Mars and Scorpio person. Mars and Scorpio is passionate and wants to follow through, but wants to remain in control over your feelings, your emotions. Sagittarius Sun and Sagittarius Rising. So Mars and Sagittarius is very motivated by seeing the bigger picture, a broader perspective. It's about being motivated by long-term goals or faraway plans. You're motivated by a sense of adventure, and so you have this big perspective on things that you know what you want to do, but you see it in long term, and it frustrates you sometimes because there's these little hiccups that you get, these little pieces of the puzzle that gets you there, but it's taking a longer time to get to the end goal. And so your focus is having a harder time taking the steps to initiate those little actions that get you to the broader goal or the broader perspective. And so sometimes you're very willful, but you're also very optimistic in your goal setting. You're very ambitious because it's, of all the fire signs, Mars, this is being ambitious and usually going to get what you want, when you want it, and how you want it. It's still you going after it, but it's some big overreaching goal or some sort of philosophical perspective on what you're doing or what you feel motivated to do. And it's about you sometimes feeling frustrated, like, why am I doing this? Or why do I take orders? Well, that's another thing with Mars and Sagittarius. They kind of want to have the freedom to do what they want. And they want to have this passion, and they have this belief. And so a lot of arguments that they have are kind of this moralistic tone. And so sometimes you get angry that you're angry by lack of integrity of other people or the kinds of things that they do, that it just doesn't make sense or it doesn't align with their moral values. And this can be you getting frustrated with a lack of follow through. And if someone says that they're going to do something, this is you actually feeling frustrated that they're not. Mars in Sagittarius is just about the beliefs of the situation and being tied to your beliefs and being tied to your morals and possibly sometimes arguing them to death and aggressively feeling self-righteous. So not always acting with integrity or the highest expression of, because Sagittarius is the preoccupation with integrity. They're the ones who say what they mean when they say it, and the nature of Mars in Sagittarius is one of the nicer placements that you need a physical outlet because Mars rules physical activity. So opportunities would be bigger than life things like bungee jumping or something that's dangerous. This is something that you could do like rock climbing. It's something that you find adventure in. Those are all things that you could use to work out those pent up feelings that you have within yourself. So for Capricorn and Capricorn rising, Mars in Capricorn is one of the best placements for Mars. It's technically exalted in Mars, and this is because Mars and Capricorn people are very easily able to act in a very practical, pragmatic, logical way to stick with whatever it is that they're doing. They're very hardworking. You're very goal-oriented. This is about you being very ambitious. This is about being an overachiever. They're going to achieve whatever it is that you set out to achieve, and they're not going to let anyone get in their way. So if this is your achievement being motivated, you're very motivated towards success, and you usually succeed at whatever it is that you do. You're trying to be very motivated, positive, pushing, and sometimes you can be angry. Sometimes you can be frustrated, especially if it comes to blockages or perceived blockages to the success to something from the outside preventing you from moving forward with that thing or whatever it is that you are so driven to do or to get. Sometimes you can get very angry or very frustrated or feel like you're getting in the way of the success or that somebody is standing in that way. Because Mars in Capricorn, what angers them most is about they have this follow through with goals. You're usually quite successful because you know you're not afraid to put in the hard work. You know it's a necessary effort for you to accomplish all that you need to accomplish in this life. And so it's about being successful. Mars in Capricorn is about drive to do something unique and push through and follow through to the end with whatever it is that you have started. to accomplish your goals, your long-range plans. And Mars in Capricorn, it's about climbing the right mountain and finding the resources in order to get there and make it happen. So Mars in Aquarius. So Mars in Aquarius is a little bit different. It's about having this drive for something that's unique that you want to do on your own. And sometimes there's this frustration of things that are imposing upon your personal freedom or your individuality. Or there could be too many rules or restrictions that cause you to feel kind of angry or pent up or frustrated or caged in. You need freedom to act as you please. You want to be different. You kind of tend to change things up a lot. Sometimes you change your mind a lot. You might jump from topic to topic or things impulsively, but you're very motivated by humanitarian pursuits, the good of all. And so you're not just considering what it is that's good for you. You are looking out for the needs of the group, for all people. And it's not about doing something that's going to take action only for yourself. It's about feeling good for the greater good. And sometimes it can be a detriment to humanity. So you're thinking about your actions and how it affects everybody on a global scale. How, even in terms of your friends group, your social circles, your networks, your hopes, your wishes, your dreams, those kind of things. You're taking into consideration other people's opinions and what other people desire and what they need, but you're not always necessarily looking at it in the way of you doing it and being independent. Now, moving forward, this can be a little altruistic, and so this can be very impulsive in taking action, and oftentimes you can change things up rather quickly. And you also need a lot of mental stimulation. This is an air sign, and you're really driven by scientific or intellectual pursuits. When you get angry with arguments, this can kind of make it. This is making it that you want to fight for injustice, things like humanitarian goals on a global scale. So when something is not good for a plan, or if it's not good for all people involved, that is what gets you fired up and angry. So for Pisces Sun and Pisces Rising, Pisces is probably one of the most difficult placements for Mars, if not the most difficult placement, because Mars is at its fall in Cancer, but I feel it should probably be in Pisces because Pisces is prone to fantasize instead of doing. Pisces is one of the most non-physical, non-tangible, non-linear of all the signs. And so Mars being such a physical, direction, action-oriented planet, it just doesn't do as well in Pisces. It makes it really confusing just to know what action to take, or to get very caught up in the feelings and the emotions of the impressions of other people, that sometimes you can find yourself taking action on somebody else's passion and then realize later on that you got yourself obligated to doing something that you really just don't want to do on your own, and that this is somebody else's, and it can get you maybe like you're feeling like you're tricked into doing somebody else's bidding. So it's kind of that nature of the Mars and Pisces, that you're very good at turning your vision into a reality, but you just have to have the correct motivation. So there's this proneness towards fantasizing instead of just doing. But once you break past that, once you can find the right motivation, you can take your vision and you can easily turn it into action, because then you see the whole picture before you actually act. It can be difficult for you sometimes to navigate how to actually turn it into action. Like, I want to see, I want to do, I want to feel. These are the feelings, and Mars really wants to do this. And so sometimes there's this play on being the martyr or the victim in these situations where you might feel obligated to do all these things because that's what's right, but instead of rather what is right for you. And this can sometimes cause you some anger, where you might feel anger, but you don't necessarily express it directly. Mars in Pisces is It's about having this difficult wanting to escape through fantasy, through drugs, through alcohol, through spirituality, spiritual bypassing with all these types of things that you'll escape rather than actually confronting your anger directly. So I feel it's a little unfair. If you feel like you're obligated to do things and then you don't want to do them, you're just kind of sort of removing yourself from the situation instead of actually dealing with it or bringing it to the table. Mars in Pisces is definitely associated with alcoholism, drug abuse, things like that, because there are the lines between anger, they internalize, and this is a sense of frustration and a sense of things being unfair, and so it's you wanting to maybe shut down or escape instead of actually expressing your anger. So there needs to be a way for you to express it correctly and to learn to express it appropriately and use it to motivate you, to use it as a driving force to actually get you to take action. Because when you take action, you can act out your fantasy and act out the visions. You're motivated by usually a deep sense of compassion or a deep spiritual purpose that you want to compassionately and lovingly. It's a bigger reason of why you don't want to step on other people's toes. You need to be able to act out of a place of love and compassion and spiritual understanding, you knowing that we are all connected. And so you don't want to hurt someone, but you're very aware that everybody is connected on some level. So Mars in Pisces needs to understand about you and what's going on there in order for you to be able to carry out with what you want, making sure that you don't carry out what other people want. I would love to hear your comments in the section below, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe.